Hello, everyone. My name is Tooways Asmal. Welcome to another episode of Tooways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show that there's more than one way to be successful other than just climbing the corporate ladder. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and the show will be available on podcast by tomorrow. For those listening on Apple Podcast or on Spotify, please leave a rating for the podcast. Now, if you're joining us live, drop a one in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves, and drop a two in the comments if you're watching the recording. My guest for this week is Anastasia Kisten, a tax lawyer who focuses on tax strategy and also works for an international offshore consulting firm. She's also a former brand ambassador and holds a master's in tax law. Anastasia, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you guys for having me.
So let's jump straight into it. Tell us your story. Where do you come from? And even outside of work, who is Anastasia Kisten? Give us that backstory.
Okay, so I'm formerly from KZN. I went to school there and I studied there as well. I wasn't sure when I finished matric, I wasn't sure what I actually wanted to do. So I always tried to make sure that I kept my options open. And so going into studies, I started off with a BCom double major in law and business management. So I could easily shift from legal to an MBA in business. But after I was done with that, I realized that I do have a knack for legal, and it's going to be in my best interest to complete my honors and then hopefully secure articles. So I managed to graduate a semester early. And during that period, while I was waiting to begin my articles, I was recruited by one of the big four in the risk advisory department. So that was my first experience in a corporate. And to be honest, I did enjoy it, but I also felt like when you are in such a big corporate, you sort of get lost in everything and you feel like you're just another cog in the machine. And so that gave me more insight into what I wanted to do for myself and my own personal goals. And so after that, I did my articles in George at quite a big firm there, which had a nice litigation department, a lot of exposure. And that's when I became a professional. After I was done with that, I wanted to redirect myself in life because I wasn't really enjoying so much of the litigation work. And hence I decided to do my master's in tax law just to get a feel of what tax is all about. After I was done with that, I was then approached by another big four to join their tax department. And then I focused and specialized in a specific type of tax, which is called transfer pricing. Uh, Although I did transfer pricing, I also dabbled a lot in international tax law, seeing as I had the legal background for it. And then afterwards, I also was an independent consultant at another, I think it's called a Silver Circle firm, to help them with some of their transfer pricing work as well. And currently, I'm working for an offshore consulting firm where we help people make their dreams come true by finding out exactly how they want to, what's important to them. And then we help them structure their finances around those goals.
Okay. And outside of work?
And outside of work, I like horse riding.
Okay. That's the first horse rider that I've had on the show. So that's always something interesting. Now, you first jumped on my radar when I saw that you worked at Nomad Capitalist. I've listened to quite a few of his podcasts, and I'm not near close to being on that client base yet. But I think it's something to work towards. So, what is it like working for that type of organization?
In the beginning, it was very daunting just because of the global presence that they have. But the team that I work with is super helpful, and I think it takes some time to get used to. But yeah, it's quite fast paced, and as long as you're willing to learn and keep an open mind, then your success is based on what you put in.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, I know you're a tax expert, but you seem to moved around quite a bit before maybe finding your place. Um, and I've done that on a few occasions. And many people, or some people, fear change, or they fear making a mistake by rather the devil you know than the devil you don't. But you don't have that. So talk to us about how you managed to overcome that.
Yes, so I think all of us are very, we fear the unknown. And so it's easier to do something that you're comfortable with. But my motto in life has been I'm afraid of staying in the same place. If I have to look 10 years back and realize that I haven't really made any progress. And so I'm not saying that, oh, if you're not happy with doing something for a year or two, now it's time for you to run away from it. No, it's where you have to assess where you are at that point in your life and what's going to benefit your future goals the most. And so if you have to jump, it's all about finding the right time to jump. Because,
Okay, that
sorry, because
okay.
I've noticed that comparing myself to some of the colleagues that I've began with, by taking these risks and not just risk without thought, I've ended up being maybe 2 to 3 years ahead of the same people that I studied with.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. I also noticed that you've worked for companies in Cape Town, Durban, Johannesburg, and even George. Definitely the first person I'm interviewing from George or worked in George. So, what learnings can you share with us in terms of working in different cities? Because I mean, you've got, I mean, Joburg is obviously the big city. Cape Town is maybe slightly smaller. Durban's definitely smaller, and then George, well, I assume is even smaller. So, what learnings or differences can you share with us?
Yes, so what I picked up is if you're young, it's best to start off in the major cities, such as Johannesburg or Cape Town. And then if you're looking more for a lifestyle, then you should approach the smaller towns like George and Durban, because if you're someone that values a family and family time, then you have more time to give to them. But if you're someone who's completely focused simply on your career, then it's best to be in the cities where there are more opportunities. So it's more about being in the right place at the right time to be exposed to these opportunities.
Sound advice. For the audience, we'll be responding to questions towards the end. So if you do have a question, please add it to the comment section now so that we don't miss them. Something I noticed on your LinkedIn profile is that you're a former brand ambassador. Now, that's not something I've seen quite often on LinkedIn, and especially in South Africa. So, what can you talk to us about the role and how did you become a brand ambassador?
Yes, so I think it was around 2021 that I was approached on LinkedIn by um, a former HR partner at, he's worked at the International Monetary Fund, Fly Emirates, as well as, what was the other one? I think it was Unilever.
Oh,
But
wow.
basically, he's a businessman from Dubai who was involved in a series of books. And so when he approached me, he told me that basically he's writing a book called Rising Stars of the Rising Economies. And he feels that I'm a young professional that's doing quite well for my age, and he'd like to feature me in the book as well as become a brand ambassador for the book itself.
Okay, so they reached out to you, and are you still a brand ambassador for the book, or has that come to an end?
Yes, I am.
Okay, okay.
So the book is published on Amazon, and if you need me to share the link with you, I can.
And I'm sure I'll put. Is it on your profile on LinkedIn?
I think the link is not there. It's just
Oh,
it
okay.
features the book itself, but not the actual link.
So check out the LinkedIn profile for the name of the book. And I noticed also on your CV, well, not on your CV, on your LinkedIn profile, you worked for companies that they say, I mean, London and Belgium. Did you actually travel and work there, or were you working remotely? And what was that experience like?
Yes. So for the one Belgian firm, I worked mostly remotely, but I attended the conferences overseas. So the firm that you're referring to was specialized in air and space law, and it was also very it was also a
Very
very interesting time for me.
and London as well. Were you also working remotely?
So the London internship was remote. That was for the remote.
Okay. And did you pick up anything in terms of like the way they work that's different to South Africa, or is the way of work quite similar?
So what I've noticed is us as South Africans actually work much harder than our overseas counterparts. But I think the level of professionalism is a bit better when it comes to working with these overseas companies. because everyone sort of takes accountability for their work. And so if they give you a deadline, the deadline is the deadline.
Okay, that's very interesting. That's something people need to keep in mind if they want to work overseas. And then another thing, so clearly I've done a lot of digging in your LinkedIn profile, so you're going to hear that coming up a lot. But I noticed on your LinkedIn profile that you have 56 licenses and certifications listed. Now,
Yeah.
firstly, where did you find the time to get all these licenses and certifications? Number one, and then number two is, would you, after you've gone through all of these, would you recommend that other young professionals also go the route of getting different licenses and certifications and the number that you've got?
Yes, so I started off while still doing my honors because I noticed that that period between semesters was quite boring. So I wanted to just keep my mind active. And so when I started doing those certificates, it was just at the time I was only doing South African law, and I wanted to get a taste of what international law would be like. So that was the first exposure I had to professors from overseas that gave me a different way of thinking. And the nice part is, most of those certificates were actually done through organizations where you didn't have to pay for a certificate. So you started off just engaging with the material and finding out if there is actually value from it before deciding to purchase. And so I think it also comes from a love of learning. There's no certificate that's going to guarantee your job. There's no certificate that's going to guarantee that that skill that you use is not going to become obsolete. And so you have to develop a mindset of learning. And the one quote that stood out to me over my life is that the only people that are going to be successful in the future are those who are able to learn and unlearn quickly.
And can you talk a little bit about some of these organizations that you were able to do those free certifications from, or that you didn't have to pay?
Yes. So the free ones, if I could recall, were through EDX. So EDX and the Udemy. The Legal Practice Council also gives you a lot of free courses uh, to keep abreast with the updated legislation. And then the majority or the bulk of them came from the corporates that I was working at, where they gave us access to it for free.
Okay, okay, that's amazing. Uh, Now, this is one question I like to ask all my guests. What is one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Um, I think I would tell myself to stop being so uptight about marks at school, and to also because I used to be a cricket player, to also dedicate some more time towards sport. Because now looking back, a lot of the life skills that I've learned from sport have actually made me resilient, as opposed to just the theoretical knowledge that I had to consume and regurgitate. So that I think would be the most important advice that I would have given to myself is try to find the balance so that when things aren't going right in your life, you know how to recuperate quickly.
That, that's great advice. Any last few words from you, or anything we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know?
I think that the value that I'd like to add for today is if there's if there are any young professionals who would like to become brand ambassadors for a book, they could reach out to you, and then you could pass them over to me, and I could see if I could organize internships for them so that they get a start in life of knowing what it's like to work for international companies.
Thank you so much. I think that's amazing. And so you heard it here first. Reach out to or reach out to her directly on LinkedIn as well. I think that's a great way for the show to end. The show has been live on YouTube and should be available on podcast by tomorrow. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on the podcast and you feel that it's added value, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on that notification bell to get automatically notified when the next episode comes out. Anastasia, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me, Ruth.
Thanks everyone for joining us for another episode of Two Ways to Skin a Cat. Goodbye.